Madison Square Garden wasn't just hosting a fight, it was hosting a verdict on heavyweight boxing itself. On one side stood Lennox Lewis, the embodiment of modern dominance, tall, disciplined, precise, molded by a Manuel Stewart into a heavyweight machine built around the most controlling weapon in boxing history, the jab. On the other side stood Evander Holyfield, a living monument to war. This was the man who survived Tyson, outlasted Bo, and made a career out of refusing to break. England versus America, precision versus heart. The dream of an undisputed heavyweight champion hung heavy in the air because no heavyweight had unified the division in nearly a decade. As the bell rang, the tension was immediate. Lewis didn't rush, he didn't posture, he didn't perform, he went to work. From the opening seconds, his jab snapped Holyfield's head back, again and again, dictating distance like a conductor setting tempo. Holyfield circled, bobbed, looked for angles, but every step forward was taxed. The crowd roared, but Lewis stayed cold. This wasn't a man looking for a knockout. This was a man executing a plan. Holyfield tried to turn it into a fight, clinching, leaning, roughing Lewis up, but the size difference in timing made it costly. The first rounds told a quiet truth that would echo all night. Holyfield was surviving, not winning. And in heavyweight boxing, survival is never supposed to be enough. As the fight settled into rhythm, Lennox Lewis began to separate himself not with violence but with control. His jab wasn't just landing, it was erasing Holyfield's options. Each time Evander stepped inside, Lewis either tied him up, pushed him off balance, or punished him with a short right hand. Punch stats told a brutal story. Lewis was doubling Holyfield's output, landing cleaner, sharper, more authoritative shots. Holyfield's greatest weapon, pressure, was neutralized by spacing and patience. Still, the warrior refused to fold. He dug to the body, tried to sap Lewis's strength, tried to force exchanges in close quarters where heart can outweigh technique. For brief moments it worked. Blood appeared on Lewis's face and the crowd surged with hope. But every time momentum threatened to shift, Lewis reset the board. Step back, jab, right hand, clinch, reset. This was heavyweight boxing stripped of romance and reduced to efficiency. Commentators began to sense it. Holyfield looked older, his movements slower, his combinations shorter. Lewis looked calm, almost bored, as if he knew the fight was already slipping beyond reach. And yet, because Holyfield was still standing, still swinging, still defiant, the tension refused to die. This wasn't domination that exploded. It was domination that suffocated. Round by round, Lewis was building a case so clear that it seemed untouchable. But boxing doesn't always reward clarity. By the championship rounds, the contrast between the two men had sharpened into something almost uncomfortable to watch. Holyfield's face told the story before the scorecards ever could, swollen, bloodied, marked by effort. He reached more now, loading up on single shots, trying to summon something that had saved him in the past. And when those punches landed, the arena erupted, clinging to the myth of the comeback. But myths don't win rounds. Lewis continued to do the small things that judges are supposed to reward: clean punching, ring control, effective aggression. He circled when needed, stood his ground when required, and refused to give Holyfield sustained success. Every exchange ended the same way, Lewis landing last, Lewis landing cleaner. The fight never turned into the war Holyfield needed. It stayed technical, controlled, measured, and that was the quiet tragedy for the American legend. Because heart can carry you through chaos, but it struggles against order. Holyfield never stopped trying, never stopped believing, but belief alone couldn't close the distance or beat the jab. The crowd sensed the inevitability, even as they hoped otherwise. By the final bell, there was exhaustion, not explosion. Respect, not triumph. One man had fought bravely, the other had fought brilliantly, and everyone inside Madison Square Garden seemed to understand the difference. When the final bell rang, there was no celebration, only anticipation. The fighters stood still, waiting for confirmation of what most believed they had just witnessed. The scorecards were read slowly, each number landing heavier than the last, and then it happened. A draw, 115-115. For a split second, the arena didn't react, as if the words hadn't fully registered. Then disbelief washed over the crowd. Commentators struggled for composure. A travesty. Highway robbery. Words rarely spoken so bluntly on live television spilled out without restraint. Lennox Lewis stood expressionless, not shocked, almost resigned. Holyfield raised his hands, not in triumph, but survival. Boxing, once again, had chosen controversy over clarity. The outrage wasn't subtle. Media, fans, fighters all asked the same question. How could a fight so controlled, so methodical, so one-sided on the scorecards of experts end without a winner? This wasn't a debate about close rounds. It was about credibility. In that moment, the story of the fight changed forever. It was no longer Lewis versus Holyfield. It was Lewis versus the system. A masterclass without validation. A performance that demanded belts but received questions instead. History, however, has a way of correcting itself even when institutions fail. The outrage forced a rematch, and in that second fight, Lennox Lewis removed all doubt, stopping Holyfield and claiming what had been done. But the damage was already done. The first fight became a symbol not of rivalry, but of everything fans fear about boxing: politics, incompetence, injustice. For Lewis, it reinforced his legacy as one of the most dominant heavyweights ever, a champion so technically sound that even corruption couldn't erase the truth. For Holyfield, it marked the end of an era, the last stand of a warrior who had finally met a style he could not bend. And for boxing, it became a cautionary tale. Because sometimes the most powerful punch isn't thrown in the ring, it's delivered on a scorecard. And when that punch misses the truth, the entire sport feels it.